Hi y'all, and welcome back to the beautifully emerging spring garden. So today I'm going to be taking you around and showing you how I prune my Bobo hydrangeas. These are specifically Bobos, and I have a hedge of them around the patio, and I have another one over there, and I prune it exactly the same way. So I'm very meticulous, as you've probably watched before in pruning my hydrangeas. I prune them all by hand except for Bobo. So I've got, I think, a couple hydrangea pruning videos, at least in pruning my 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. I think I did one last year on pruning the paniculatas, just generically paniculatas that have further branching, like these pinky winkies behind me, which you can't really tell because they're kind of sticks right now. But the Bobo hydrangeas, and I think it's going to be the same way for pufferfish. Now that pufferfish has been released last year, I do have that one and I'm trialing it. So we'll have to see this year. But Bobo is super floriferous, which just means it has a ton of blooms and a ton of branches. And it would take you all day if you needed to go through and prune, you know, several Bobo hydrangeas very meticulously and cut off all the tiny wood, like I mentioned in a previous video. I just come through and use my hedge trimmers and I shape them kind of like you would a boxwood and move on with my life. In most cases, I'll let the sticks fall and add mulch to the soil. If there are any leftover blooms from the winter, I will pick those up and discard those. But typically, because of the habit Bobos have, which is a very kind of naturally round shape, they're kind of easy to prune, and I don't spend any extra time on them. I can get this job done in like 2 or 3 minutes versus spending hours meticulously pruning every branch. So let's go take a look at that right quick, and then I want to take you around and show you the perennials that I just planted in a couple videos ago that are already emerging from the ground. So just to show you the end goal, this is kind of what we're going for. It's just kind of a naturally round shape. Both of those, I've been doing it this way for several years and it's worked really successfully for me. And I just kind of leave the debris where it is, mulch over it if I need to add some more mulch to this bed, which I kind of do. There's some weeds here and there. Not so bad at the back, but the front's pretty bad because I planted a lot of stuff this past fall up here. To the extent you do not have electric power tools, this can be done with obviously like probably boxwood shears. Loppers, obviously, probably not because it would take a long time. It might as well use secateurs or hand pruners in that case. But I would recommend, it doesn't have to be DeWalt, but pick a brand and just for the batteries. That way you don't have to have a bunch of different batteries and chargers sitting around. Pick a brand and stick with it. Ryobi has a lot of nice options I've seen at Home Depot. I happen to go with DeWalt because I have existing DeWalt power tools and I've increasingly built on that tool set over the past couple years. I have this, I have a smaller chainsaw, a larger chainsaw, the electric loppers that I got last fall for my birthday that I showed y'all, and they are just really wonderful to get jobs like this done really quickly, and makes it much easier on your back, your hands, your neck, and everything else. So let's get started. For those of you new to the channel, I'll show you what these hydrangeas look like in August. I think I have some photos from August from the hydrangea garden tour I did a couple years ago. But this is about the height I pruned them, and you can actually see where I pruned them last year, about the same height. Typically, you cut paniculatas down by 1/3. Bobos can get 3 to 4 foot tall and wide. If you don't prune them, they can get much bigger than that. So keeping them a nice size. This is about as tall as I want them to get. Some of them have really large upshoots randomly throughout the season, which is okay, but I try to shape them just a couple feet high and they'll put on a good 2 to 3 foot growth, mostly 2 during the season. And this is their 3rd growing season. So these were planted in April 2020, yes, the year of the pandemic, April 2020. And that is how quick and simple that was. Took me less than 5 minutes to complete. There are a lot of sticks laying around here. I will come through and pick those up, or I might wait a few days to see where those blow and blow away. and then pick up anything that remains. But these things get really thick, and so in another month you won't be able to see all those sticks anyway. Probably less than that, probably another. We're a little ahead of schedule. We did have a frost last night, so for those of you who are getting ahead of yourselves in zone 6 or southwest Ohio, there's still time to be had before our last frost, most likely, so don't push it too far. Let's go take a look at some of the beauties in the garden right now. So while we're on the theme of hydrangeas, I want to show you these 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 right quick, because I've told you the arborescents are kind of like a bunching hydrangea. They shoot new stems from the ground, just like Hydrangea 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, which are the blue and pink hydrangeas that change color with the soil. But check out this one. So this hydrangea I actually planted, I think it was 4 years ago, from an offshoot of these hydrangeas behind me. So this is 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 by Proven Winners. This one is a little smaller, as you can see, than that one, and that's because this was a rooted stem that I found and I just replanted. But you can see right here, I could actually dig up these offshoots right here. Now I'm not, because this hydrangea is a little smaller and I want it to fill out. But that's a whole brand new hydrangea for you if you wanted to dig it out. Make sure you get some good roots and carry on and plant it somewhere else, and it'll make a beautiful new shrub for you, just like the parent plant. Now I know as soon as I say this, the Ajuga police will come get me, but I planted a lot of blueberry muffin Ajuga last year, which is similar to chocolate chip. It's supposed to have dark foliage, very bright blue purple blooms in the spring, like it's doing right now and coming through. These were all little tiny plugs, so they're just now starting to spread, primarily because I don't want to have to mulch this area for as long as I live in this home. And they actually do really well. So Ajuga does spread, so there's some people out there who will shame you for putting Ajuga in your garden. If you plant it for the purpose of you wanting it to spread, that's perfectly fine. Don't be bothered by those people. But if you plant it because you think, oh, this is a cute plant, not intending for it to spread, then you're going to be in a world full of hurt in a few years. Or just manage it every spring. It tends to grow really quickly in the spring. Pull it out around where you don't want it to be, and then it'll be fine the rest of the year pretty much. It grows slowly after the first spring flush. You can see I have a different variety right here, which is variegated. I can't remember the name of it right now. I planted this last year, but you can see how it's spread out. So I don't have to mulch in this area anymore, because although this looks kind of thin right now, as spring continues on, it'll thicken up and spread a little more. So that was my goal, to kind of fill this spot, because I've told you I have to put down lots of mulch. I've already put down the equivalent of like 50 bags this year, and I've mulched 2 beds and a part of another bed, and that's just in the front. Lots of mulch this garden takes. So last year I didn't mulch the whole garden, so that's why I need a little more this year. I tend to go heavier every other year, so I don't have to do as much the years in between. So like I said, it's not my favorite job. But I want you to look at these perennials I planted that are popping out of the ground. So these are the bubble bath alliums and the dark side of the moon 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗏. So I got to come through and remove these hostas. I never did get to that I mentioned in the planting video where I did these, but you can see the alliums are starting to push out of the ground a little bit. And the 𝗟𝗶𝗏𝗏 is really interesting because they look like fern fronds. If you've ever had ferns in your garden, this is what it's looking like right now. So see how dark and beautiful. It's kind of a red. They'll be a little more purple as it progresses, but they're coming up everywhere I planted them. Here's one that looks a little behind, I think, but I've even seen them over here starting to show up too. So progressing along nicely. And then I got this area mulched, so they're hidden under there somewhere. So here's the thing about 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏. I have people sometimes comment, hey, I can't grow 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 in my garden. What's the problem? And I have to admit, I don't know, but I would recommend you try a different variety. So I think they can take, as I mentioned, a little more sun than you might think they can. In the video that I planted those 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 specifically are rated to take full sun. We'll see if they can take full sun. Most 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 cannot. They need a part sun to part shade location, but I would encourage you to give them more sun than you might think they need. The reason being is one of the first things I ever put in my garden back in 2018, maybe it was, I think I actually ordered from Great Garden Plants that long ago. I ordered some 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and I don't know the variety type. It was just a red variety, and it still comes up. But it is the most pitiful thing, and I've left it there. I've never transplanted it because it's under a tree. It just does not do well. Now, 3 years ago, I guess, I decided to give 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 another chance, and I planted the Vision series, specifically Little Visions in pink, and it has performed incredibly for me. It is a part sun location. It does get protection from the evening. It's an eastern facing planting location, so it gets protection from the western facing sun. After lunch, it's pretty much in shade the rest of the day. I'll show you those right now, what those are looking like, because they're looking really good, but you can tell which ones get more sun and which get less just based on the progression of the plants in a series I have planted right here. So I just blowed all of the leaves out of this bed, and I need to come through and mulch it, obviously, but this is Little Visions in pink, all down here in a line. Right behind these 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, which I can never remember the name. I think it's toffee tart, but I'm not sure. But you can see it gets a little bigger because this one gets more sun. It's under this magnolia. This is a sweet bay magnolia that I mentioned I repaired a couple years ago. You can see where it cracked, and I drilled 2 holes through it with bolts after we had an ice storm and screwed it back together, and now you can't tell at all other than I know it's there. It looks simply like a limb was cut off where the bolts were. It's actually grew over the bolts and done perfectly fine. So if you ever have an issue with a tree splitting, you can try and drill a hole through it and bolt it. It works really well. This is approximately 5 years old now, so it's been that way for several years, 5 years at least. But this is the Little Visions in pink, planted all the way down here, and you can see this one's just emerging. It's probably getting the less light of all of them right here on this corner, but you can see they get progressively larger as it goes that way. But they still perform really well for me. They bloom, they get really nice size in this spot. Little Visions, of course, is a smaller version of Visions in pink. I really like the Little Visions specifically because they stay kind of small. If you have an area where one can get larger, certainly just check out the General Vision series. But I've had people mention, you know, hey, I have trouble with 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. I have had really good success with the Vision series. So if they're hardy in your zone and you want to give them a try out, they're really beautiful in spring. They get kind of boring, you know, after they bloom because the blooms turn brown, but that's winter interest for you, at least for a little bit, and summer interest because they just stay where they're at throughout summer. And then you come back in spring, and I actually mowed these down with the string trimmer. Really easy cleanup. Blowed the remains out into the yard, and I can mow right over them. All right, before I let you go, I did get some plant mail in today, so I want to show you what I got. It's not much, but it is from Longfield Gardens. I ordered these late winter, probably the January time, because that's when I tend to really get kicked into gardening mode and order a bunch of stuff like everyone else because I'm a crazy. So I am not associated with Longfield Garden. I have a friend, Danielle, from North Lawn Flower Farm. If you don't follow her channel, she has a wonderful garden in Pennsylvania, and she actually does cut flowers from her home and sells them to local residents in her area. But she was sharing some things that she was ordering from Longfield over winter, and I got really inspired, and I kind of ripped off some of the things she ordered and is going to be planting. So thanks, Danielle, for the inspiration. But these are mostly gladiolas that I've ordered. Now, I've never planted gladiolas before. They're not hardy here in zone 6, but my grandmother in Alabama had them and loved them. And so these are various mixes that are really, really pretty. So these are large flowering gladiolas. Now, gladiolas, if they're not perennial in your zone, you can succession plant them because once they bloom, they're kind of over. But what you'll do is you'll plant some of them, wait, you know, a few weeks, plant a few more, wait a few weeks, plant a few more, and that way you'll have a repetition of blooms throughout the season. And this one specifically says it's purple. That's not helpful, Longfield Gardens. Let's see if I can actually figure out the color names of these. This one says Costa, so I'm going to put pictures on the screen because I did order. There's only 3 types of gladiolas, so I'll put them on the screen. This one's called Costa, and it's a purple color. This one's called Katharina, and it is a pink color. And we have one called Large Flowering Mon Amour, pink, yellow, and white. So I think that's a mixed one, and they're really gorgeous. So those were recommended by Danielle. And then I also ordered some ornamental lilies called 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, which I thought were really gorgeous, and I'll put a picture of those on the screen as well. So ornamental lilies are perennial here, so I'll plant these where they can come back in years to come in a nice sun to part sun location as recommended on the pack. Thank you guys for following along with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, figured out how to prune some hydrangeas if you have those specifically in your garden. Don't be ashamed to prune all your hydrangeas that way if you don't have the time or the capacity to prune them selectively stem by stem. It will certainly work for you. It's not obviously the preferred method necessarily, but that don't mean it won't work. Thanks for joining me, and remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care. Bye.